Welcome to Mount Evergreen Cemetery, the city of Jackson's oldest cemetery and also the site of several historical distinctions. When the cemetery was first founded in 1843, it consisted of 11 acres, but today it spans 25 acres. And in fact, one of the points of interest about this cemetery is that those very acres are a snapshot of what Jackson looked like before development. You know, when settlers first came here, they cleared the land, they cut the trees, they leveled the land for crops, for agriculture. Later, for paving roads, they leveled it even further. This cemetery is one of the few spots in all of Jackson County where you can step foot on it and see what Jackson looked like before settlers, before pioneers, in its natural native state. From the rolling hills to the variety of vegetation that's here, some of these trees are hundreds of years old, and you can just see the variety of trees that would have existed back in its native state. Another area of interest in Mount Evergreen Cemetery is an area called Soldiers Field. And this is a field that was set aside to honor veterans very early on, from as early as the Civil War right on up to World War II and beyond. It honors the men and women who served in the military to protect us, to protect the liberties that we have. During the Civil War, Michigan provided one group of men. It was originally called the 1st Michigan Colored, later federalized as the 102nd U.S. Colored Troops. These troops fought valiantly, and unlike white soldiers, if they were captured, there was no hope of prisoner exchanges. They did not get that. In fact, their consequences were very dire. One of the soldiers that fought was named Jacob Hamilton. Jacob was an enslaved American who was originally on a plantation in Kentucky. He found his freedom, came north to Michigan, ended up coming to Jackson. In 1863, he enlisted in the 1st Michigan Coloreds. He served with that unit. He's one of the fortunate ones that lived to come home. When he came home in 1865, he lived on Stewart Street in Jackson. I believe he worked as a barber. And then when he died, he was issued a military marker along with all the other veterans that are honored on Soldiers Field. So one of the historical markers that is in Mount Evergreen Cemetery is this local marker, and it was installed by Experience Jackson in, I believe, 2021. And this marker celebrates the individuals buried here who participated in the Underground Railroad. And this was a secret system that transported freedom seekers from slave states in the South to free states in the North and in Canada. And there are 8 individuals buried here, possibly more, but 8 we can prove, both abolitionist and freedom seeker. This marker will tell you a little bit more about that. Another distinction is on the national level, and this cemetery is listed with the National Park Service's Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. And when I applied for that distinction, the application was among several that was reviewed around the country. It was approved, and we have earned the right to have the logo of the Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. So it's listed nationally. But also, we have this beautiful cast iron state marker here, which was installed in 2019, and this was given by the state of Michigan. It gives a great overview of the history of the cemetery, as well as some more details on the Underground Railroad. So these are just a few of the historical distinctions that make this cemetery so special, and also a magnet for several tours that come here that want to know more about this history. One of the interesting aspects of this particular grave memorial for the DeLand family is that it says in the bottom, Pioneer Family of Jackson. This family was among the first wave of settlers to come to Jackson in 1830. And actually they lived with Horace Blackman and a few other families that came here. But those first time settlers are distinguished by Pioneer Family, and you'll find graves, occasional graves like this throughout some of the older cemeteries. It's the folks that ventured forth into a wilderness basically and were part of actually building the village of Jacksonburg, as it was called originally. Well, Mount Evergreen Cemetery is also the place where you can find out more about people who were very important in Jackson's growth and development just by looking at their grave marker and gleaning information. One of those buried here is Horace Blackman. And Horace Blackman first came to this area in 1829. He was looking for land to develop back even before Michigan was a state. He came to this spot. He liked what he saw, fertile ground, lots of trees to support lumber for, building purposes, lots of clean running water. He decided this is a good enough spot. So he bought 160 acres at $2 an acre and ended up founding what we now know of as Jackson. Another person buried here is Ella Merriman Sharp. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because she is the namesake of the Ella Sharp Museum. This is the marker for the Merriman Sharp family. Merriman was her maiden name, Sharp was her married name. And this is such a distinctive and beautiful monument. It brings out another point of interest about this cemetery, and that is that it is a site of incredible art. If you think of these monuments as really works of art, angels carved in marble, flowers carved out of stone, draped around vases. This is a very distinctive example of that art. And here you have a tree trunk with ivy entwined around it. This is for the Merriman Sharp family. It signifies the entire family and the plot itself. And carved into it, looking like a script, are the names of the family members and other information about them. But the individual markers for the family and for Ella herself are these cut logs with ivy draped in them, the name and other information, the birth and the death date. So this is just an example of, I guess, art and history entwining, making this place particularly interesting. And just one other interesting curiosity that you'll find, quite often when you go through cemeteries, you will find coins on markers. And different denominations of coins have different meanings, but in general, coins are left as a sign that the person that walked by had a special connection or knew that of the person that is deceased and being memorialized. There's some personal connection. And on Ella Sharp's individual marker over here, I see quarters and dimes in a nook and cranny of the marker. If you do find coins, just leave them alone, don't touch them. But that's just another one of the many fascinating aspects of a cemetery. Mount Evergreen Cemetery is one of those cemeteries that has a lot to offer in terms of art. This sculpture is just one of the many examples of beautiful artworks that are here from various carved figures. This particular one, is known as the Laura Evans Monument, and it's a memorial in honor of the Union Civil War soldiers. It shows a large bronze cast figure of a Union soldier holding a Springfield musket with two figures on either side of him, also carved in bronze, symbolizing the man on one side, symbolizing fathers that have given up their sons and or veteran older soldiers. The woman on the other side symbolizing possibly mothers that have given up their sons, or Lady Sorrow in general over the great loss of this war in which 600,000 Americans perished. It's on a granite base, and it is given just in honor of the Civil War, but also has become a memorial towards all veterans that are buried here on Soldiers Field. This monument is listed nationally in terms of its significance, not only because of its renowned sculptor, but also for its beauty. If you look at art monuments having to do with the Civil War, this will probably be listed. So it's just one of many examples of the art that you'll find in surprising places in cemeteries. Well, this is the grave marker for Emma Nichols. Emma Nichols is another important historical figure. She was born an enslaved American on a plantation in Virginia, and in the late 1840s, she escaped northward through the Underground Railroad, came to Michigan, ultimately came to Jackson. She worked as a seamstress, according to early Jackson City business directories. She married here, she had children, she died. This is her grave marker today, and it's one of the more distinctive markers because it bears tribute to her trek on the Underground Railroad. At the bottom here it says, Emma and her husband arrived in Jackson on the Underground Railroad. Of special interest with Emma is that she has 3 great-great-granddaughters that live in Jackson today. So as I like to say, it's like history coming full circle because it intersects with the present. In fact, I was able to talk to her descendants and ask them what they would like on Emma's gravestone. When I first found the grave marker or grave site, there was just a little tiny marker, metal marker in the ground to indicate where it was located. Through the generous donation of a monument maker, this monument was made in Emma's honor. I was able to connect with her family and ask them what kind of special distinction would they like to have on the marker. They said the North Star, and that's this symbol right here. The North Star was important in the Underground Railroad because it was a point of celestial navigation for people that were traveling without maps, without compasses. They could look up at the North Star and see where they had to go to orient themselves north. Emma was born on Christmas Day, December 25. That's interesting too, because freedom seekers, enslaved Americans didn't generally have birth certificates, so they weren't really sure when they were born. The one exception would be if they were born on a special holiday like Christmas or Easter. That is a story that survived generations, as is the case with Emma. So her whole family knew she was a Christmas baby. So that's just some of the interesting details about Emma's marker. But there are several other historically significant figures that are buried here that would be great starting points for research and for local history. William Sparks is another one, affectionately known as Captain Sparks. He was the founder of the internationally famous Zouaves precision drill team. He also founded the Cascades Falls and is the namesake of Sparks Park. Austin Blair is another important historical figure that's buried here. And Austin was Michigan's one and only Civil War governor. He was a Jackson resident, so he operated as a governor during the Civil War out of Jackson, and Jackson became a real hub during the Civil War because of that. And his grave marker is very distinctive, honoring him as Michigan's only Civil War governor. So in many ways, Mount Evergreen Cemetery is like a history book, except instead of having the pages bound together on the spine of a book, these pages are spread out over 25 acres. And instead of the story being written on paper, they're actually written, inscribed in stone, in granite, in marble. And each of these stories, each of these stone tablets, tells of an individual that left some mark in Jackson's growth and development, spanning a variety of races, of ethnicities, men, women, young, old. They each had a story to tell. And this cemetery is a good starting point for anyone that's interested in exploring that story of Jackson's growth and development from a historical research perspective, from an art perspective. Just if you appreciate sculpture, if you appreciate symbolism, many of these markers have different symbols that tell you a little something about the individual, or whether you're just interested in checking out the topography of the land, what Jackson was like before development, before all the land was excavated. This is a snapshot of that. For all these reasons, this cemetery is a very popular spot for tours and for historians and a variety of other people. And it also happens to be a very peaceful spot. So thank you for this opportunity to share the wonders of this cemetery.